welcome to the Sydneyist, a weekly conversation about the city we love. Our motto is much curiosity, a smidgen of cheek, and definitely no whinging. I'm Elizabeth Farrelly, and we're broadcasting here at Eastside Radio from the Ellen Slate studio on 89.7 FM or streaming on eastsidefm.org. Tonight we're talking about North Sydney Pool. You think of North Sydney Pool and you imagine that incredible, unforgettable image, the harbour, the overarching lacework of the bridge, the great grinning face of Luna Park with wonderful red lips, and the luminous turquoise plain of water. It's an astonishing sight, quintessentially Sydney, I would say, and a wonderful place to swim. But, of course, now no one has swum there for quite some time, 3-something years, with the reopening having been recently deferred yet again, and again and again. What went wrong? Here in the studio with me, I have Councillor and Mayor of North Sydney, Zoe Baker. Zoe, welcome.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for being here. You must be sick of talking about this, I imagine, and also feel a little bit like kind of Lion's Den. Are you sick of it?
Well, no, I'm not. I'm not sick of it because it's going to be one of the things this term of council has to deal with and manage to conclusion. But as a councillor who spent probably 5 or 6 years pointing out at every step of the way that this was a mistake,
yes,
and then finding it come to being, and then tasked now with this new council to see it through and to fix it,
up, and also wear it politically if you're not careful.
Yeah,
I imagine.
But it is frustrating because it's never pleasing to be in the space of "I told you so," and in this, as one of my fellow councillors says, she bites her tongue as she says "I told you so." But but we can't focus on "I told you so." We have to now be looking to the future and beyond the pool.
Yes.
We have to look to the financial sustainability of the council more generally.
Of course. And we'll come to some of that. Meanwhile, are you a swimmer? Do you miss the pool like the rest of us do?
Yes, I am a avid swimmer, and my first swimming lesson, I think, was when I was 2 at North Sydney Olympic
at that pool.
Every school carnival was at the North Sydney Olympic Pool, and I am a swimmer, but I swim in the City of Sydney pools.
We, which is to say Sophie, our producer, and I visited the pool yesterday. In fact, we had a little bit of a walk around just to see what we could see, which probably wasn't terribly much, but this is a few minutes of what we found. We're standing here amid all the construction noise at the north end of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, looking at what used to be the North Sydney Pool, and what now looks like just a kind of blank hoarding surrounded with pictures of what used to be North Sydney Pool, of how it was in the 1920s or 30s actually, and all you can see of the actual pool from where we're standing at the moment is this enormous crane. Oh, here comes another construction vehicle, forklift, going past at a great speed, but the crane, which looks from this angle higher, considerably higher than the Harbour Bridge, may not be, but certainly higher than the Luna Park face, which is over to my right. So we're about to go for a bit of a walk around the hoarding, which is covered with advertisements for Icon, the contractors, who, as it happens, also built Opal Tower. Isn't that curious? This is presented as the world's most beautiful pool, and it says it's becoming Sydney's best aquatic centre. We don't have pools anymore, of course. We have aquatic centres, just the same as ways we don't have churches, we have Christian centres. Weird what happens to language. We're peering in at where the pool used to be. The arches are still there, but of the pool itself, nothing at all. We see no water, nothing swimmable at all, and almost nothing in the way of a building except the arches and the old brick entranceway structure. And we're passing the polychrome brick and all the sweet little frog and kind of fountain decorations that are done in plaster above the entranceways to this. It's not really deco. It's people being kind say it's freestyle classicism. It's really a bit of a mess, but it's a mess that we absolutely love because it's so much Sydney. This is a quintessential Sydney, and we're walking past. You can just see the tops of the arched facade peeping above the scaffolding and the peeling painted plasterwork showing scallop shells and twirly, what are they, fish of some kind, red fish, and then some kind of stalks above the tallest archways, but quite a lot of kind of slightly sad looking decoration because it's been neglected for so long. Oh, we're peering through a hole now and into where the pool used to be. There's quite a lot of concrete block. We're being moved along by a smiling man with a hard hat. But everything is kind of battened down and boarded off and behind barbed wire. And in front of that, just the polychrome brickwork and an awful lot of construction work. But nothing much has been constructed in, 3 years or something of, again, as you do, for reasons that hopefully will become clear. The hoarding proudly says icon, as if, and of course there are icons here. This is absolutely iconic Sydney. In between the northern pylon of Harbour Bridge and the Luna Park face sits this supposedly third icon. The pool itself is an icon, but the construction company calls itself icon, and that is slightly disturbing because they're the ones who built Opal Tower. It's definitely a long way off what we can see here, and it's actually where the old cafeteria used to be, at the I guess the eastern end of the pool itself. There's a big hole in the ground. Lots of some footings have been poured, lots of reinforcing steel sticking out of it still, but nothing in the way of superstructure. And the pool itself appears to be also not only completely empty, but itself still a building site. Quite hard to tell. Yeah, well, we've had a bit of a walk around the site. We've walked pretty much all around the edge of it, as far as you are actually allowed to go. And we're back where we started, looking at the fabulous bridge, the extraordinary city, the wonderful icon just around the corner at Luna Park, but in front of us, this rather sad, dead-looking pool. And we have to hope that, they say it's going to be finished sometime next year. Now it's been deferred so many times. I have to say it looks a long way off. That was our visit to North Sydney Pool. Zoe Baker, thank you again for being here. Let's have a conversation. This was built in, I think, 1936 by the wonderfully named Rudder and Grout architects. So I think it was very apt, and it was hailed as a triumph of scientific design and the wonder pool of Australasia. Now, though, it was refurbished in 2000 or 2001, wasn't it? Fairly majorly.
Was.
Yeah. And then but it needed another refurbishment 20 years later, is that right? So what did it actually need to be done?
Well, there was concrete cancer in the 50-metre pool. And also
so in the pool structure itself.
In the pool structure itself, and also in the grandstand.
Okay. And
so it really did have to have a major structural
that's
overhaul.
Pretty significant, isn't it?
It is.
And so let's start with that then. I remember the 2000 refurbishment as being really lovely. I thought that the addition of that restaurant, and which was that, what was it called? Ripples
at the lower level, and another in the old, at the upper level, it had been the pool manager's residence was converted into aqua dining.
That's right. And so there was this lovely sense of the planes of water and the planes of the restaurant just kind of jutting out, almost like diving boards or something, which was great, and I loved it. And the hydrotherapy pool, something right at the top.
And that was a 25-metre pool. They won a Royal Australian Institute of Architects award.
Yes.
And at the time that it was demolished in 2021, was certainly I don't believe at the end of its useful life. But
we could have kept those parts of those additional parts and still dealt with the concrete cancer, you think?
Well, neighbouring councils have done just that. They did a refurbishment at Lane Cove Pool, which was around 10. For Lane Cove didn't have the heritage and the challenges of the site that North Sydney has. Yeah. But they did that for $10 million. And in fact, that's how the project started, was to be a $28 million refurbishment, to have a light touch, to stabilise the structure, update the change rooms, because if you had swum there, it still had the sand in the gritty sand in the paint as the floor.
I quite like those
I did like that, and they were the original change rooms from the 30s.
Yeah.
But perhaps a family room might be an expectation now.
I remember the change rooms at Prince Alfred Park Pool before they refurbished that, and there were those sort of corrugated iron sheds which stopped above the ground level so you could see everybody's feet. Yes. I thought they were really sweet. But anyway, I guess they have to go, those sorts of things. So that was the $28 million figure, which was the very start of this project.
Well, the actual very, very start was that around 2015 there had been a community consultation. That council had commissioned architects to do concept plans for a master plan for the pool, and there were 6 concepts. And the council went out on community consultation, not once, actually twice, because our community were unhappy with the form of the consultation.
Okay.
And although it was everything from just stabilise the pool through to huge vision of sort of back to the diving boards and a water polo pool.
Whoa,
and everything in between.
Yeah.
And the purpose of that was to say to the community, what appetite do you have? And what came back from both of those community consultations was an option 2, which was roughly estimated at $28 million, and it was to be a light touch, stabilise the pool. The strong community view was this is an iconic local pool, but it's a local pool, and the council could have funded the $28 million entirely without any borrowings. And so what happened was that didn't proceed because the Baird government's amalgamations meant that all councils were prohibited from pursuing large capital works projects that weren't already in their
all councils
in their budget.
Gosh.
And North Sydney was one of those councils who were slated for amalgamation. We fought it and won. Yeah. And so there was a hiatus until that battle was won. Yeah. And in 2017, there was an election, and there was a mayoral minute very shortly after that election that said, let's finally fix the pool, and it opted. The majority of that council voted for it not to go out to community consultation again, but to proceed with what was known as option 2, which was the $28 million project.
And then that didn't happen, or it didn't happen that way.
No, it didn't.
So we're talking about when you were a councillor in opposition, essentially, in the minority.
I was in a minority of 3 independents.
Yes. And the mayor was then Jelly Gibson, is that right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And so what did happen next?
So what happened next was, in a nutshell, was that there was a steering group formed, and they went on a much lauded trip to Melbourne to look at pools to inform.
Melbourne.
Yeah.
Curious.
All of them were on Greenfield. All of them were on Greenfield site.
Do we not have pools in Sydney you could look at?
Well, and my view at the time, and remains the case, is that it is a very difficult site, North Sydney Olympic Pool. You have important heritage. It's not only just the heritage of the pool itself. It's in an Art Deco precinct of the Harbour Bridge and Luna Park. But it's also a hugely sloping site.
Yes.
It was built on fill from the Harbour Bridge construction. So there's contamination, and all of these things are commonly known. Yeah. And you're right on the edge of the harbour.
Yes.
So when they came back from that trip to Melbourne, they had a workshop, a value management workshop, and what ended up happening out of that was a series of recommendations that basically doubled the scope hugely increased the scope of the project and doubled the budget to $58 million.
Why? I mean, what were the additions, I suppose?
Oh, the additions were additional retail. They were a children's creche. There were, really, that in your tour of the hoarding, I think what happened there, my very personal view on this was that line that it's the world's most beautiful pool and it's going to be the world's greatest aquatic centre, I think that says everything.
That's when it changed.
That's that change. That ambition totally changed. But what didn't happen was it didn't go out to community consultation.
Okay.
So the scope of it doubled in size. The budget of it doubled.
Yeah.
And there was no reference back to community about the appetite for it and the opportunity cost of what that increase in budget would be for other projects and vision of the council.
Whoa. That's a very good moment for us to stop for a quick music break.
You won't admit you love me, and so how am I ever to know? You always tell me, perhaps. A million times I've asked you, and then I ask you over again. You only answer, perhaps. If you can make your mind up, we'll never get started. And I don't want to wind up being parted, broken hearted. So if you really love me, say yes. But if you don't, dear, confess. And please don't tell me, perhaps. So if you really love me, say yes. But if you don't,
that is Sancha and the Blue Gypsies with a song that you no doubt know called Perhaps, which is rather the theme of this pool saga that we're discussing. I'm here in the Alan Slate studio at Eastside Radio at 89.7 FM. And we're discussing, I'm with Zoe Baker, the Mayor of North Sydney, and we're discussing the saga of the North Sydney pool. We've got from 28 million to 58 million, and we're now at 2018, so still 5 and whatever years ago. But Zoe, so what happened next? So at what point was I know it was after the Opal, I'm pretty sure it was after the Opal Tower fiasco that Icon were appointed as the contractor for this project.
So the council went to tender in 2019 and what happened was there were no conforming tenders. Okay. And so by July to December 2020, there were the council resolved not to proceed with the tenders because they had no choice. And the reason there were no conforming tenders was that all of them were above the $58 million budget. And so it was resolved that the general manager would be delegated to negotiate with a preferred tenderer. And it then came back to council just before Christmas, 15th of December in 2020, to enter into to delegate to a group of 3 councillors to sign off on final terms of a construction-only contract for then $63 million.
Whoa, okay.
And at that meeting, it was resolved that council would borrow 30 million, and that they would also take 3 million from the open space budget.
Oh, okay.
So by this stage, I think it was the three independents, of whom I was one, had voted, I think, more than 23 times against the procedure. We had more than over many times put up motions to go back to community consultation, to review the scope, to have more information about what that level of borrowing would mean.
And that was in the middle of COVID.
It was the end of 2019 and then into 2020.
Which makes everything more difficult and much easier, of course, to have all meetings in Zoom and exclude people from proper information, as I recall.
Well, two of us were literally excluded, voted out of the meeting.
Wow!
At a meeting that considered the pool.
Wow!
So it was.
Well, that's a bit extreme.
It was. So what then happened was that council resolved to enter into a building contract with Icon, as it turns out. One of the big issues, and ultimately this new council that I'm now the mayor in, we commissioned an independent review following a very large and unexpected variation to the contract in September 2022. And really the findings of that was that failures of early planning.
This is the PwC report we're talking about.
That failure of early planning, but particularly the fact that there was a construction-only contract. So council itself at that point was project managing internally a now $63 million project.
So when you say construction only, it had been designed already. You had
Well, at the time they entered into the construction contract, there were no final for construction drawings. So the council was managing.
Oh, that sounds very uncomfortable.
Yes, and in fact, all of the findings are that's one of the reasons for the delay and for the increases in the cost.
Yes, of course.
Because there was they weren't final.
Because they're pricing something they didn't actually know precisely what it was.
And often the final
sounds like
the final detail
recipe
wasn't
for disaster.
Ready. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Okay, and so. Just to recap for a moment, so the reason for the blowout to this point, so there's a what you might call excess of haste. Let's be kind. But before that, the reason for the change in the scope of the work was principally, am I right in assuming this, to make it more commercial, to generate an income stream from commercial premises or rentable premises? Or
perhaps those who voted for it may say that, but there was no detailed business plan to support that at the time. And that's why there are capital expenditure guidelines that the Office of Local Government have for all large capital works for councils. And one of the things that they require is prior to committing to a large capital works project, you must have gone to community consultation with the full financials of the project, the proposed project, so the community can see it. But more importantly, with details of the opportunity costs of committing to that.
And that clearly didn't happen.
And that didn't happen. And we were in breach of that, even though our council submitted under the capital expenditure guidelines and received permission from the Office of Local Government to proceed.
That's bizarre. Why didn't they step in?
I think we're a case study on what not to do, particularly at the elected level and at the institutional level. And I'm really pleased that we now have a different council, a new general manager, a new leadership team within the organisation, and they're now being tapped on the shoulder from other councils who are dealing particularly with pools about lessons from this.
Of course, it's very difficult, isn't it, for people who are elected from the community with no particular expertise to deal with such complicated, big and technical issues. But before we get onto that, I want to ask you quickly about that cost thing and what the implications. I mean, if we do go jumping from 68. Was it 68? Yeah. To possibly over 100 million. Let's just talk about what the implications are for council and for North Sydney as a municipality.
So pretty much from the moment that construction began in March 2021, there were variations under the contract and extensions of time. Now, some of the extensions of time were COVID and weather, but a lot of them were to do with design, not being ready.
Yes.
And so under the contract, we have the council has recently resolved to borrow a further $20 million.
Whoa! So that makes 50 altogether, or
no?
Something?
We'd already cut $24 million from our last year's budget in order to make certain we didn't have to borrow more.
Yeah.
So it will be at 100 to 105, 110 million. My view was that it was always going to be that. What the well, at least close to that. Because the
so
original
there's significant interest costs in that.
There are.
And that will mean, I mean, the interest costs alone, I imagine, will have some opportunity costs for...
Absolute opportunity costs for our budget.
The people of North Sydney.
So about open space embellishment, about other projects that could have been undertaken and won't be.
Isn't it a shame?
It is.
We've got about 1 minute, I think. Let me just ask you, if you saw this systemically as a local government issue across, say, New South Wales or Sydney, what would you change if you could change 2 or 3 critical things to stop this kind of thing happening?
Well, first of all, and I put this to the Minister, is there needs to be better resourcing, and for the Office of Local Government, the capital expenditure guidelines are good, but they need to have meaning and be enforced.
Yes.
And if they had been, I think we would not be in the position we are in North Sydney.
So you need someone checking along the way.
And the second thing is I think there needs to be radical transparency around capital works, both for local and state. And I think we should be moving towards open contracts, that if you're going to tender for public works, you ought to be having a contract that's open so that the community
So we could look
understand.
online and see all the detail.
Exactly.
And know it.
And I don't think a
Public
council
money.
would have voted to go into that in that rushed way if that had been the case.
I'm going to have to stop you there, Zoe Baker. Thank you so much for that. Wonderful conversation. We have run out of time. I've been talking with the North Sydney Mayor, Councillor Zoe Baker, about the North Sydney pool and the ongoing saga. If you have great ideas for us, please drop us a line on the Sydneyist at eastsidefm.org. Thank you so much for joining us on the Sydneyist, and thank you, Zoe, for being here.
Thank you.